Hello guys, there's a video I want you to watch. It's going to thrill you sincerely. Now, if you are still contemplating on having a side chick, or you are married but you want to marry another wife, or you are married but you have a lady that helps service your life, or you're married and you have another guy outside, you call them sugar boy, your sugar baby, sugar boy, you need to watch this video. Or you are still married but you are thinking of getting another wife. Before you do that, I need you to watch this video and learn from these life lessons. This is by far the most important podcast I've seen in 2025. This podcast was hosted by GAISE Papa in his podcast called the Black Flame Podcast. And in this series, he interviewed ID CABASA and PK. Let's dive right in.
There was a question in my head. It would take us somewhere completely different. And I wanted to throw it at ID. I want to be sure I want to go there. I was going to talk about how majority of African, like decades ago, Africa was predominantly polygamous.
You know, ID CABASA is so funny, sincerely. It's extremely funny. Wow. Let's keep watching.
Let's go.
Africa was predominantly polygamous. Now, Africa is increasingly monogamous in structure, polygamous in practice. So polygamous outside the structure.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I can't stop laughing, sincerely. This is so funny, wallahi. But let's keep watching.
Like, what do you think is the effect of that societal change between, say, early 20th century, mid 20th century, late 20th century, and in 21st century? I don't mind you bringing faith into it. Yeah, because also it's not generally, monogamous in structure. Some are monogamous in structure, monogamous in practice, right? Mm-hmm. So, and the reason why I'm asking is there are increasing talks or mentions or suggestions that we should return to a polygamous structure, in which case, okay, there are 4 wives or 3 wives, so so should we stick to the new wave on?
So there is unaccounted for data in all of this. Most Africans don't even want to get married again. They just want to sleep around.
Okay, that's another dimension.
Because if we just look at the part of should it be monogamy, we have religion that actually supports. Should I say it supports? Because I actually asked question around, and some of the condition that comes with is a bit.
It's unattainable.
Yeah, it's unattainable to have all of that.
You're talking about the male alone we.
Mm-hmm.
That is said in Islam.
So there is a condition to it.
If
actually,
you can love them the same
equally, which it might. And for me personally, I don't really have an opinion. PK is counselor to all of that, because I it's not that I don't have an opinion, but it's more of a reserved opinion that I'm still breathing on. Because if you look at it, I've had conversation. This is what's the name again? Black Flame. And I'm not divorcing faith. I'm not divorcing anything, but I'm saying there have been questions, which PK is going to answer this question, but there have been questions that have been put forward that as it is in the beginning, so shall it be. World without end. Amen. Abi?
Yes.
And they were men. These are some of the conversations that have been brought forward in scriptures that were polygamous. They were great. I will not even use the example of Solomon, because for me at some point I felt that the supposed very wise man eventually was stupid or foolish as a family man, because I think he was specific. He asked God for political wisdom, the ability to do all of that, but he didn't ask for wisdom to manage family and all that. But I know as at that point it was not really a sin, which also, when you said it was coming from our roots, our kings, they marry plenty wives. Even then, way back then, normal people, they marry more than one wife and all of those things. I feel it's more of a cultural thing for even those guys in the Bible than, because this scripture that we quote, that so shall a man leave his father and mother and be joined to his own wife. Was that scripture not there when these guys were marrying 2, 3 wives and 4 wives?
Wait, no. That scripture is New Testament.
New Testament. And who told you that the practice did not continue?
Wait, no. Wait. No. If we want to go the faith lane, the New Testament is clear. It will be the husband of one wife.
Hold on.
Tell you a leader.
Yes.
People tell you if you want to be an overseer.
Yeah, that is when you have one wife.
A leader, an overseer should be husband of one wife. They will say, I'm not an overseer.
Okay, that's one angle. Also, when you say the people were great, or all of that. Now, if you look at the patriarchs in the Bible, whether you look at Abraham wasn't polygamous. Yes. Yes, now. If you open Bible now, you see.
Okay, because he didn't marry them at the same time. Okay.
Abraham Sarah died before the next wife. Hagar was not a wife. Hagar was concubine that Sarah took to him. So Abraham wasn't polygamous. Okay. Isaac was not polygamous. Jacob technically wasn't, because he didn't ask for Leah. He didn't want to marry Leah.
But he did marry her now.
No, if you look, that's what I'm saying. If you
more wives than both of them.
Those were their concubines now. Those two.
No,
they are not wives now.
You are taking the conversation back to where you are running from.
About polygamy now. Yes, it's not asking you to have 2 wives.
Yes, so
it's asking you to have one wife and have side chicks.
And
that's what is scaling.
And that is where you are going to.
Which is where you are. Yes. So they are not wives, but they are concubine. Concubine is side chick. The modern word for concubine is side chicks.
Right.
So if we are not careful, guys, like I'm always very careful to put down with fence without knowing why the fence was actually erected. Is either to keep a beast in or to avoid the beast coming into it. So if we keep, I'm asking all of these questions, not that in fact, one wife that I'm married to is hard to satisfy. Oh, they told me long. Not to not talk off. I want to put, I want to put more while on myself. Well, like we're having conversations, which I believe should go out there. The conversation is changing, PK. The conversation, like you rightly said, the conversation is no longer keeping all of them under the same roof. It's almost about where once I have one legally, because what you are saying legalistically is correct, that he married only one wife. When that one died, married another. But the guy too, he had to actually, he slept with.
In fact, now there's a lot of they're also like. People just want, so for some people they want children, but not marriage.
Yes, there are a lot of like PK we say about options. There are options that are distracting everybody from that conversation marriage. Like we normally converse that I have chosen to be a slave to the truth, which is Jesus, and I'm also choosing to be a slave, to be married to one woman. But here, as we speak now, I'm saying conversation is beyond me. The conversation is going around. I've had conversations with people that will tell you that, CABASA, when this person married more than one wife, that person married more than 2 wives. So are you now saying that God allowed that person to get married to several wives, and me, how am I different from that person from getting married? That is one. Then 2, you've had people will say, how they say it? But you understand, Charlie. One head is not better than the other. That why can a king marry several wives? And me, as our culture, whether you are a king or you are even a poor man, you can marry 2, you can marry 3. And I know also of culture.
Whose culture?
Yoruba land. You don't have to have money.
I just want to be sure.
So there are cultures also in this world that the woman is actually marrying many husbands.
Correct.
So some of them are coming up. These are conversations that
example.
PK is our
I would like to speak to it.
disruptor that I want him to really talk to that. Yeah.
I would like to speak to it, and I say this very humbly. I've heard a lot of school of thought developing, but I think that knowledge has a character.
Sincerely, PK is so intelligent. PK is so intelligent. The explanation he gave about knowledge and everything is so intelligent. You know, this is the first time I'm actually hearing this. Sincerely. And it blew my mind. You need to hear this.
And when we miss the character of knowledge, we domicile its essence in our own context and experiences. And so we now interpret experiences by its peculiarity, not its principle. Principles are universal. When you teach a principle, anybody anywhere should be able to apply it. Hard work is a principle. Anybody anywhere can apply it, right? It shouldn't be cultural. Do you understand? It has to be maybe on the worst case existential, if it's not natural. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So when you look at it from that perspective, while principles are universal, experiences are peculiar. Now, just because it is easy for you does not make it easy. Don't confuse what is easy for you for what is easy at all. It can be a tough thing, but by your history, by your exposure, by so many providences, it can be an easy thing for you. And just because it worked for you does not make it a principle for the world. And so when people become unguarded in making that distinction, they teach their personal experiences as principles for the world to follow. So they are teaching the peculiarity of experiences. And that happens a lot in religion, right? And so those who lay standards for people to follow and those who try to disrupt it are most of the time guilty of teaching their peculiar experiences. So those who pass information pass error. And what is missing, as far as I'm concerned, is the ignorance of the character of knowledge in itself. Knowledge has pretty much 5 elements that has to be understood. There's context of conversation. And most people don't go beyond context. In fact, they brag on context. But there's premise of that context. There is principle of the premise. There is dispensation of the conversation.
The time when that happened.
There's palliative. Now, that is the problem. When something is the palliative, it is accepted. I'll give you an example.
It was accepted for a period,
in time to manage the dispensation. It is not supposed to be an eternal experience, a timeless experience. It is a temporary experience created to manage a dispensation. Let me give you a modern palliative. Orphanages.
Yes.
Orphanages. The standard is family. Every child should grow up in a family with parents in an ideal family. No child should grow up in an orphanage. But because of human wretchedness, somebody will be a fool to produce beyond his capacity and create children that cannot be led. And so society, in its sense of mission, sense of thoroughness, and sense of urgency, had to create a palliative, which is orphanages, to manage the unguardedness of men.
Right.
And orphanages, however, are not supposed to be meaningful. They're supposed to be a lesser experience that is better than kids
nothing
on the street.
But the world is
you understand?
now.
So you see what J.K. Rowling is doing. She's a billionaire, and what is she doing? She's not investing in orphanages. She's saying, no, we can't accept orphanages as our reality. It's a palliative. My own non-profit, my own foundation is going to rescue children from orphanages and restore them back to families, because they have uncles, they have aunties. Some of them still have parents in this world. We will trace them. We will empower the parents to take their children, as opposed to empower the orphanage to keep taking children. That is somebody who is thinking on a different level.
You can't think
That palliatives are not enough. Just because they work does not mean they are designed to do so.
Or
we
that
are
they are designed
collapsing
to
to exist in the first place. We are collapsing so many meanings to be able to endure the fact of a palliative, right? Once you understand that, if we agree on
there's
this,
context,
there's
there's
context,
premise,
there's principle, there is
there's
dispensation,
dispensation,
and there's palliative.
Yeah.
In everything you read, you have to look for that. Particularly when you are studying history, you have to find the 5.
So
Every time
let's
you
be
are
clear to when you are reading Bible.
Every time you are reading the Bible,
Yeah.
you have to look for that 5. Otherwise, you'll be stuck in premise and be recommending something of 500 years ago to people of
That
2025.
has expired.
Do you understand? That has practically expired. Or you can be recommending something that is eternal and claiming it has expired just because it came later. Just because something came later does not mean it's not supposed to have been. So people talk about the New Testament like a second, like afterthought. I'm like, you don't get that was the standard from the beginning.
From
the
Genesis.
people of Old Testament could not receive it.
Yeah.
So when God is dealing with you in a palliative, you interpret it as God. That is God's way. That's not God's way. That's not God's way. That is God coping with your ignorance and dealing with you within the weight of knowledge you can manage. Now I have bone, but you can't do it. I have meat, but you can't take it. So
Let's
take
build
milk for now.
It's not that God's way is
Not
milk.
that I desire to be giving you milk. Milk is not for adults. I hope people know that, actually.
Yeah.
Milk is not for adults, it's for kids, right? And so you are not supposed to take milk forever. At some point, you should elevate and begin to take strong meat and bone and move, right? So because God served you milk does not define God's way of serving. That is what God's way of serving in a state of
Where you
ignorance,
are.
where you are. And so because you now know that it's God that saved you, no devil saved you, it's God that saved you.
So you
You
build
now build
A doctrine out of it.
permanence on a temporary experience, and now begin to communicate to tomorrow's people that this is how God saves, because you know that's how He saved you,
And you are
that's
sure it was God
and you are
that
sure it
saved
was
you.
God that saved you. So this is how God saves. This is how God saves, right? So once we understand that, then we backtrack to where did polygamy come from? That's what we need to understand.
Where did it come from?
We must understand also that in the Bible, people were recommended for stoning by law. The law of God
right.
says that when you commit adultery, you bring the woman out and stone her to death.
So the people who are citing polygamy as a biblical principle are conveniently leaving that out.
Yes, and saying so we have to go back to so many things that were permitted by God in a palliative. Now this is the
That
thing.
was dispensation.
That was dispensational. Now, it is not that God has any pleasure in stoning people. It is that there was a social justice system that defined Bible days, ancient times. That no matter where you go in the world, brutality is consequential management. If you mess up, they cut off your hand or they cut off your... It's instant judgment.
Still do it.
There was no grace. They cut off your fingers, they cut off your hands, they cut off your head, they stone you to death. That was the social justice system. If the Bible was written in 2025, what you'll be seeing is that if you find the woman in adultery, divorce, or if somebody steals, jail the person. If you kill somebody, electrocute. You'll be seeing because you will seeing the character of our social justice system now. That was the social justice system then.
Yeah.
So God now interfering in human affairs and institutionalizing his own ideas was coping. If God has said forgive in those days, they don't know the meaning of forgiveness at that level. It's consequential management. You slept with somebody, we are cutting off your something. We are removing your hand. We are going to castrate you. That is what they knew. We all know that the world, this is fact now, the world of the human experience was short, was brutal. This is fact. From early men, it was a short life.
Across the era.
It was across the era. It was brutal. And it was survival of the fittest. Right? Some people are strong. They won't go and hunt. They will wait for the weaker man to go and hunt, to take all the risks. When he's back, he will go to his house, take his food and kill him. Do you understand? He's stronger than him, but you say, why should I go and waste my time hunting? You are as hungry as me. You go and hunt. When you get back, I'll collect your food. I'm stronger than you. That was how society was, and that's how we continue to grow. When we even came to law, where we can now begin to say, if you do this, we cut off your finger, it was an improvement. It was worse than that. You understand what I'm saying? It was worse than that. So the idea is that God tolerated many things.
Many of those things. Yeah.
They were not God's standards.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And one of them, you see, let's be clear. When David took wives, first of all, when Israel was going to have a king in the first place, God warned them of things that are going to happen. That kings are going to do this. This is the behavior of kings. Now, I didn't choose kings for you. But if you are going to choose kings, it's not just going to have chariots. It's not just going to have bodyguards. Your sons are not just going to begin to clean his shoes and manage his palace. He's going to marry your many wives. He's going to do this. Right? This is what's going to happen. I can't stop that because it's is
the way of
the way of kings. It's the way kings do. So I'm going to have to walk you guys through that experience. Are you ready for that? Because if you are expecting me to wake up in the morning and kill all kings, it's a journey. They are as human as you are, and I'm going to have to walk with them. So God permitted that, and we are speaking integrity of scripture now, right? I'm not speaking culture now. So part of what happened was God permitted that. God permitted many things as well. In the Old Testament, you must understand, there was no revelation of the ministry of the devil. There was no revelation of it.
Everything that happened was interpreted as coming
from God. The only reaction to mystery is devotion.
Yeah.
That was the only reaction. If you bring a camera in the wilderness, if you have shown Pharaoh and say, Pharaoh, look at you yesterday, they will add it to one of the plagues. They will say, wow, this is heavy. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Create something
because
you become a deity.
You will contend with Moses. What did just disappearance created worship? You don't understand. The absence of Moses created devotion in the camp of Israel. Do you understand? How much more if you have introduced anything that represented cluelessness of any form was greeted with
devotion.
Worship. You see what I'm saying? So part of what was happening was that there was no revelation of the ministry of the devil, which also meant the elasticity of his evil was not understood. So when the devil is moving, they don't know. They don't know. So that was why you could read scriptures like, is it not from the mouth of God that both good and evil go forth? In the New Testament, we now understand that God cannot be tempted by evil. Neither does he tempt anyone. But that was context in operation. Dispensation. That was dispensation documenting truth. That was truth being documented in the dispensation.
If a faulty documentation because of the limitation of that
time. If God has shown Isaiah a robot,
how will he describe?
What will he call it? If you have shown him a plane, what will he call it? His context is bird. He's going to say, I saw him a big bird with hands like iron, with teeth with noise like the sound of 1,000 men. That's what he's going to say. He's not going to say, I saw a plane. He doesn't have any context of a plane. In fact, there are friends that I have now who are now drawing some things, and they are suggesting that some of the things documented in the book of Revelation were not beasts, they were robots. Some of the things coming out from the sea were machines. It's not that it was one. So we are going to see all these things as we grow and as we journey. This is somebody documenting 2062 in something BC.
20 AD.
Sorry. What is he going to call those things? You see what I'm saying? In the same way, there are experiences that were visiting them that could only be interpreted within the energy of the life, the present that they knew. Part of them also, GAISE Baba, is that there was no revelation of the ministry of the Father in the Old Testament. How many people call God Father? You see what I'm saying? So there's no revelation of that. There's no revelation of the ministry of the devil. How do you then credit source? How do you determine cause and effect when you have no understanding of origin? Do you understand? Or you don't know who control an environment. You don't know the stakeholders in an environment. How do you define the experiences? Do you understand what I'm saying?
So let's take it to that. Polygamy part.
Yeah. So these are very, very important. First, to understand the context under which those conversations, those experiences were happening. So when it goes back to polygamy was the experiences of the people of the time. When God came into the picture, in the same way that it took God how many years to introduce grace? It took God how many years?
1,000 or so.
Do you understand? To introduce residency of God in man. It took God how many years? For so many years, all God did was coming upon him for service and living. Residency had to be a curation. Right? So in the same way, God was not interested in human customary laws. God was interested in establishing divine law. And divine law, sadly, had to endure customary law and human law, right? Until it's time, until the people can receive it. And God has no problem with that. Now, just because God had no problem, let me tell you something, this God does not have a problem with. In the Old Testament, people will complain to God and he will bless them. They will grumble. Now, the Bible says a double-minded man cannot receive anything from the Lord. But in the Old Testament, people were not just double-minded. They were double-mindedly stupid. And they would tell God, why are you going to bring us to the wilderness? We are hungry. Okay. Moses, give this to them. God wasn't approving their behavior.
Yeah.
But he was giving them what they want anyway. Just because he's not complaining does not mean approval. So because God did not complain or did not kill anybody for marrying 10 wives, for marrying 200 wives, does not mean God accepts that as a standard. Number two, just because God does not accept something as a standard does not bring on it eternal punishment. You see those two dichotomies. So once you see, so because God is against it,
does not mean you are damned.
Does not mean you are damned if you practice it. Just because God is silent on it also does not make it.
God approves
God approves it. You see what I'm saying? So
how do we distinguish between the things that God's disapproval of translate to damnation?
I'll tell you.
And the things that don't.
You know, Jesus answered the question. He said, give to Caesar
What is Caesar?
what is Caesar's, and give to God what belongs to God. A lot of problem is most people don't know what is on the list of what belongs to Caesar. They don't know what is on the list of what belongs to God. So they give to Caesar what belongs to God, and they give to God what belongs to Caesar. And God is saying, hey, I don't have a problem with Caesar. I made Caesar. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Just give to me what belongs to me. Jesus went ahead to talk about how people put premium on cumin and tithes, neglecting the weightier matters of the law. Love, mercy, that justice, that these things are. So whether we like it or not, even the book of John says there is a sin that leads to death. There is a sin that does not lead to death. And he said, I'm not asking you to make intercession for the former. He said, all unrighteousness is sin. He said, but there is a sin that leads to death, and there is a sin that does not lead to death. It's in 1 John right there, right? So we worry a lot about so many things without taking the discipline to really look at the premium that God has on it, right? So for me, the way I understand it, I don't think that God is sitting down in heaven that with the urgency of why Christ died and was crucified and ascended and now seated, and the responsibility given to ministers to execute based on that experience, that a man who marries 3 wives or 4 wives or 2 wives is the supreme urgency of the gospel of Christ, such that an entire curriculum has to be devoted to that conversation. I think it's petty and useless. I think that we should worry more about what leaders do, right? And leaders should continue to model what is right. And the Bible is clear. If you are going to be an overseer in God's house, if you are going to be a deacon, you are going to be a leader, you are going to be a bishop, let him be this. One of them is husband of one wife. Another one is let him have a reputation among those who are without. We should worry about that as well. Because those who are without are sinners. It's saying it should be resourceful and have credibility in a way that can unlock the humility and curiosity of those who are without, which is sinners. So that is what scriptures say, and we should mind that, right? And that is what I believe. That's where I stand. We can supply so many other facts to this thing, but this is a timed podcast, and we don't want any unnecessary argument that is of no profitability to the flesh.
So, Pique,
Wow.
your final word on that?
He has given it now.
I've given
No,
it.
clearly. Let's make it a bit.
So my final word, if what I said is for whatever reason missed, my final word is that I grew up in a polygamous home,
Yes. So
and I know firsthand what the intangible consequences of polygamous are that documents can never measure. I grew up in a polygamous home where competition was at its highest level, where your daddy expects you to love everybody in the house because they carry your last name, and your mom warns you about people who carry your last name. It's not saying they are your enemies, but it's saying be guarded. Now, as a child, that's too much for you, because these are people who carry your last name. By the time you become an adult, you become incapable of trusting anyone, because people who carry your last name, you have to be guarded with. In a polygamous home, your mom wants you to be first in class, not because of the ideal of excellence. She wants you to be first, because if you are first, the resources of the father comes to her, which protects you. So as a child, that's a lot. When you grow up, you begin to pursue the loftiest things in life for the wrong reasons, because you are being trained to pursue the best for the wrong reasons.
Now you need to listen to him, or listen to PK in this one. He's talking from an experience. Most of us, we don't know so much about polygamy. Most of us didn't grow up in a polygamous home, so we don't know what it means. You just want to go and marry second wife. You don't know what the problem you are causing. You don't know the enmity you are bringing. Sincerely, I've seen persons that grew up in a polygamous family, and I know how they react. There's so much competition. There's so much competitive. Yes, they have this thing at the back of their mind that I need to get they are so much possessive. They want to secure for their own, and it's a problem. But they don't know it's a problem, sincerely. So PK is talking from an experience, not just being a wise man, but he's also experienced in this. And I need you to learn from these mistakes. Don't go into starting up what you cannot build. Don't go and create the problem you cannot solve. Don't go and create a demon you cannot cast away. So I want to encourage you, learn from this. For us growing up, stick with your wife. Don't go and think about getting another wife. Make your marriage work. Make it work. By all means, make it work.
Not for the ideal of excellence, but because it buys you and your mom more space in the pocket of your dad. You see what I'm saying? And you live paranoia. Let somebody touch your head, depending on how enlarged that environment is. Don't eat here, don't do this, don't do that. You just live a life of suspicion and paranoia. And nobody is measuring that. I've spoken to so many people about polygamy, and I listen to everything they are saying, except that they are not describing my experience. They talk about the dad. You will hear a dad says, all my children are in peace. Yes, on paper, it looks like all of us were in peace. But we were dealing with things that you cannot see. My life to today is still damaged on many levels because of my experiences in polygamy. And I've taken time to study it. Even in homes where they say we did not fight, we had peace. There are scars that are beyond documentation. And my conclusion, and I say this with due respect, is that you can't grow up in a polygamous home and experience normalcy.
Bam.
And there's nobody I have seen who is bragging on it. If I sit down with him, I will show him all the therapeutically I will show him all the inadequacies he cannot account for. There's so much wrong in your life that you are not counting, and there's so much you are counting that does not count at all. And I will document that for you. And it's a burden, and it's a reality. We can speak to this issue of side chick as well. It's not like it's a testimony, because they are giving science to these things now, that you have to be having sex,
the eggs in the mask,
and then how many times can you sleep with you? Maybe that's science. Where I sit, I don't believe. There are sciences that are subject to. And do you know how many things do you know that we now have some of the things we call planets? 30 years ago are no longer planets.
It's weakness of science.
It's weakness of science.
Inconsistency
of science. Now you are recommending that people should go and be jumping around, and then in another 10 years are going to come and say, oh, we didn't consider this fact. And then they've created an empire that they cannot control. So how do you build life on that counsel? I would tell people, hold on to meaning. Hold on to meaning.
Hold on to meaning.
Hold on to meaning. A lot of advices are out there, but hold on to meaning. And that's very, very important.
Right.
And I'm not saying that by judging anyone.
Right.
I'm not trying to pull anybody down, because I know people deal with all kinds of experiences. I'm not standing on any platform pointing fingers at anybody, but I'm saying pay attention to meaning.
But if the counsel is pointing fingers, you collect the finger.
Yes.
I like the way Yoruba people describe all these side chicks. They call it agbere.
Thank you for going there.
Agbere.
Or collect gain.
Shino, that is used misspent and all of that. So probably there are some of the things that people should actually consider, because all of these things, then they get cost of.
And I think CABASA is coming from another angle. Keeping a side chick is expensive. People don't know. In this economy, what are you doing with a side chick? Then he said something that I like so much, that even taking care of his own wife is not easy. It's very expensive. It's not easy. Talk more, getting all that. Why will you go and get more burdens and put upon yourself? Most people are dying of high BP, and side chicks are part of it. Getting expenses you can't even handle. You need to pay your house rent. You need to pay your house rent for your family, your wife. Then you also need to pay the house rent for your side chick. You're taking care of another woman's children. You still have your children to take care of. Your wife needs to plate her, another side chick needs to plate her. Your wife needs a new phone, the side chick needs a new phone. And what you understand, according to scriptures, you can't serve two masters at a time. Marriage is serving a master. In marriage, your wife is now your master. The same with your wife, you being her master. That's the exchange. When I talk about master, it's not about or someone you are submitting to. You guys are now one. So think about it. You can't serve two masters at a time. You can't. It's so stressful now. You will love the other and hate the other. So most times you find out that you can now start giving attention to that side chick outside, but you give less attention to your wife.
So these are some of the things that, because sometimes when you describe things to people based on the fact that you are just telling them God does not want you to do this, probably when they see it more from the point of why God is saying you should not do it, it's not that it's God that is going to, that thing is going to affect.
Even what God says, there's a reason for that saying.
So by the time you know why God is saying it, as simple as probably doing some things that some people will say, like Christians now, we like to glorify weight from sin. And I can see that most weight, if not all, will eventually lead you to sin. We eventually lead you to sin. As simple as drunkenness. You said God is not against drinking and all of that. Okay, I'm not saying that you should not drink. By the time you start drinking and they call for a prayer meeting, knowing the way By the way alcohol works. So, we try to put that part of maybe it's just a weight, I can do that. So I just think sometimes too, Bible, yes, has a lot of mystery in it, some of these things that we learn, but there's also common sense. Even that science itself will tell you, like, I know where that conversation of they are saying prostrate thing and all of that, saying
we have examples of people who have lived up to.
And
I know somebody.
wife.
I mean, I know somebody who lost his wife
My
in his
grandfather had one
30s
wife.
and did not remarry.
In his 30s.
Yes, and he lived up to 90 something, and did not remarry. Now somebody may say he's doing something in the corner. I don't know, but he didn't remarry.
You can find science to explain what you want to do.
You know, I
About
think
anything you want to do, you will get a quote or you get something to support it.
So these are the things I learned from that podcast, and I want to encourage you to go to Black Flame by GAISE Baba and watch that series. Watch that series. You're going to get the full story from A to Z. Watch that series. It's very powerful. And I want to appreciate GAISE Baba, ID CABASA, PK for the wisdom they shared and so many things they talked about. God will bless them richly. And don't forget, this is Life Lessons, where we bring in interviews, sermons, podcast series, things about life, things we're going to learn from. It's better we learn from people's mistakes so that we don't make our own mistakes. That's the safest way. You don't need to go make your own mistake. You just need to learn from people's mistakes, people's lessons, in order to make your life better. So this is the channel for you, and I want to encourage you to like, share, and subscribe. I still remain your friend and brother, Mr. Obina. Peace out.